Hey everybody! Koricon Nala here, and this is my review of The Mummy. And the second half of this video is also going to be talking about a subject that came up on Twitter that has to do with this movie and other big budget films, but I thought it would be appropriate to talk about it after this review since they're related. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned after the review for that. The Mummy was directed by Alex Kurtzman, and it's got Tom Cruise and Sofia Boutella in it. This is basically the movie of the mummy. You know, mummy gets put in the crypt is protected, they uncover the crypt, mummy gets out, mummy tries to take over. I mean, it's a standard mummy storyline. But I am going to have to disagree with a lot of the reviewers out there that gave it a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to give it a fresh score. I did have fun with this movie, and overall I had a really good experience, so I can't say that it's a bad film. It's a popcorn movie. They're trying to recreate the Universal monster movies from the early 1900s, and in that aspect I think they got close. There's a lot of promise there. I really want to see where they're going to go with the dark universe, so it did get me intrigued. Tom Cruise always goes above and beyond physically for his action movies, and I do respect that. That being said, I did have some problems with the film. The opening exposition by Russell Crowe, it worked in The Lord of the Rings, but I didn't think that it worked very well for The Mummy. It wasn't bad, it was just like, alright, okay. I don't think it needed to be there. Personally, I would prefer that the dark universe wasn't in the present day. I would want like a late 1800s, early 1900s feel that would closer reflect the time periods of those stories, the original stories, and because I'm partial to period pieces. But I thought it would give it a much better look and feel and aesthetic for the dark universe. The Mummy confused many of the casual filmgoers. I talked to a lot of people and they thought it was a sequel to the Brendan Fraser films, which is still kind of recent and beloved in people's minds. I would have started with a monster that didn't have a popular movie anytime recently to compare to, like maybe The Invisible Man or Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde or The Wolfman. It would be better to ease the audience into the universe with a basic premise that's easier to accept and doesn't have any recent popular films to compare to. I was also kind of annoyed with, I kept hearing a lot of people that were comparing Sofia Boutella's Mummy with Cara Devine's Enchantress from Suicide Squad, and I think they're being ridiculous. The only similarity they had was that they were, good-looking females with some tattoos on and a little pale. But other than that, there are no other similarities. I thought Sofia Boutella was one of the highlights of the movie. I really liked her as the mummy. I thought she did a good job. She pulled out a better performance than I expected from after seeing the trailers. And, I mean, she does well in almost everything she's in. I really liked her in Star Trek Beyond. I thought she was one of my favorites in that movie as well. And even though they were using this movie to introduce everybody to the dark universe, I was happy that the Mummy's story arc was at least self-containing, even though they of course left it open with other questions so that they would show that there is going to be a universe or sequels, something like that. But the Mummy's story was still pretty much self-contained. It didn't have some of those bogged down, uninteresting parts that a lot of movies have when they're trying to start a universe or trying to set up sequels. So the Mummy part was at least self-contained. The cinematography was great. The action set pieces for the most part were really good. Camera was pulled back. You could see what was going on. Not very many shaky cam or close-up cuts. There were a couple, but not as many. They did showcase the location for the action scenes, which was good. And the action sequence in the airplane that you see in all the trailers was pretty cool that they did it all in 0 G. So to wrap up, it's not as bad as people are saying. I think some of the critics are just riding the hate train because they repeat what other reviewers are saying instead of thinking for themselves. But they also do that in the other direction, and they'll ride the love train on a movie when people that they repeat are doing that as well. I thought it was a fun popcorn movie and made me interested to see where they were going to go in the future of the Dark Universe. However, I don't think you need to see it in theaters. You can wait to see it on DVD or streaming. So overall, I'm going to give this movie a grade of a C+. Is it a bad movie? No. Is it a great movie? No. Was it a fun movie? Yeah, sure. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's not something that I would suggest watching in the theater, though. So check it out on Netflix or DVD when it comes out. I still think you'd have fun with it. You just don't need to spend $12 to go to the theater for it. Thank you for watching my review of The Mummy. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on this film. What did you like? What did you not like? What grade would you give it? Now I wanted to get into the Twitter question. I had posted that I was going to be doing my review of The Mummy, and I got this. Now, most of the time I don't normally respond to aggressive questions or comments just because I don't want to fuel that kind of pointless argument. But I thought he had something interesting to talk about. I just didn't want to respond in a very short tweet. But the first one that he had said was at the bottom there. Why waste precious hard-earned money on shit franchise movies? Family outing at a restaurant is a much better option and worth the money. Yeah, that's a great option to spend your money on if that's what you want to do. Franchise movies, or as I call them, popcorn movies, they're fantasy escapism. Popcorn movies get bigger budgets because they make larger profits. Just because it's a big budget film doesn't mean it can't be made well. That's why I follow directors. A good director can be a make or break for a film, and it makes all of the difference. If they can get the clout, then they can get bigger budgets and have the leverage to not allow studio influence. Because whenever the studio gets involved, things get worse. Studios need to hire people that they trust and then leave them alone to do their job. Sometimes it'll fail, but most of the time it will work. In the US, we have superhero movies, action, sci-fi, fantasy, and CGI animated films. Those are our big budget popcorn movies. In India, which I have a lot of fans in India, those would be romantic comedies and masala films. Those are the movies that you guys have for escapism. Every film industry in every country have their genres of escapist films that make a lot of money because people want to get away from reality for a couple hours and just be entertained. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's the same reason why we spend a lot of money on hobbies and a lot of time on the internet. We're escaping from reality for a bit. Fantasy is always more appealing than reality. His second question was, what happened to Hollywood who made Shawshank Redemption, Silence of the Lambs, Forrest Gump, and such classics? Current movies are for minting money. Well, all movies, no matter when they're made or what film industry they're made in, that they come from, are made to make money. It's an entertainment business. No producer or studio invests millions of dollars for art. Art films are made with little to no money, and they're usually driven by the passion of their creators. Movies like Shawshank Redemption, which was made for $25 million, and Silence of the Lambs, which was made for $19 million, they have relatively low budgets. But the studios had name recognition attached to them, and they were based on popular novels. So it had an established fan base and made it a safer investment. That's how those movies got made. For Forrest Gump, it had $55 million, but the way they were able to get that money is because they had Robert Zemeckis directing it with Tom Hanks in it. And during that time period in the 90s, dramas were making a lot of money. So the studios felt safe to invest $55 million into Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks. There are great movies that come out every year that are not big budget popcorn movies. If you want to see current movies that have great scripts with similar budgets to Shawshank Redemption and Silence of the Lambs, even Forrest Gump, then you should check out films made by A24 or other independent film companies that are they hire good filmmakers and then they leave them alone to make their movie. And that's partially of why Netflix has been doing so well with their TV shows and movies, is because they fund the movies and the TV shows, but then they leave the creators alone to do their job. Many of my movies in the top 10 list from 2016 were not franchise films. But tell me, guys, what you think. Do you agree with him? Do you agree with me? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends. Don't forget to hit your notification bell. And I will see you on the next video.